Today promises to be a very, very amazing event, and I hope that you are ready. Please, if you have not told your friends, your family, your colleagues, your group chat members, please kindly send the link to them. If you're on the training group, the link has been sent. Let them know that we are live. Let them know that we are live. Let them know that we are on ground. Let them know that we are on ground at the moment. Let them know that we have started. We have 1 minute to share the link with whoever it is that we feel needs it. Please share it now. Let them know that we are live. Let them know that we are live. Let them know that the meeting is on and we are about to get locked in. You could also join us on YouTube. The link has been shared in the chat box. You can join us on YouTube as well. Yes, good evening once again, everyone. If you are in Nigeria or Lagos, I believe that you are probably rested or resting or at home or on your way home or still at the office or in the bus, wherever it is that you are. I hope that you are hale. I hope that you are hearty. I hope that you are doing amazing well. Welcome today to today's Life Enlightenment Forum. We're glad to have you here. As you know, the theme for today's session is adapting and thriving in global professional environments. And we already have our speaker on the call. So I will just yield the floor to Mr. Ezekiel and Mr. Ezekiel Namani for the opening prayers so that we could proceed. Yes, okay, I see you on call. Mr. Ezekiel Namani, you have the floor for the opening prayers.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We are grateful because of tonight. We thank you for granting us the privilege to be gathered once again, to learn and to share. We ask and pray that your spirit will breathe upon us. You will breathe upon our guest speaker. You will cause that our ears will be blessed. And the lessons we will learn from this meeting tonight, we add value to every life in Jesus' name. In
Amen.
Jesus' name, we have prayed.
Amen. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for that session of prayer. So we're riding now and we're going to be welcoming our speaker. As you've seen in the communication all through the week, we have been talking about how this session is very, very important for young professionals who wants to have or who wants to build a global perception, who wants to be seen and who wants to build a global perception, not in terms of skill, but in terms of the quality of their art. And today happens to be a very amazing session because we have our facilitator whom Nigeria gave roots, Italy gave him rigor, and Canada gave him his platform. But we know that discipline, faith, and a hunger for excellence is what carried him through. Our guest speaker today is Dr. Kennedy Obinna-Idu, and he is a mathematician at the University of Toronto, whose academic journey spans from Nigeria through to Italy and Canada. He holds a PhD in mathematics and has received numerous scholarships, awards, and distinctions in recognition of his commitment to excellence. Beyond research, Dr. Idu is passionate about teaching. His journey reflects God's grace, the discipline of rigorous academic and impact of strong mentorship. Having navigated diverse and demanding environments, Dr. Idu's story inspires courage to step beyond familiar boundaries, as well as mindsets of faith, possibility, and purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, please, with your virtual hands, make welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Kennedy Obinna-Idu. You're welcome, sir. You have the floor. Thank you very much. Please, I want to see the emojis flying. Thank you very much. Sir, you have the floor. And I believe that you'll be granted co-host shortly so that you could share your screen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
But before you proceed, I want to say that you have 30 minutes for your presentation so that we can use the floor for questions and answers.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Stopis. I'm gonna just share my screen. Yes, I believe I'm able to share. Okay. Can we all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so today first of all, I want to thank you for the privilege to speak to your spaces. Wonderful to be here with you. I'm just trusting God that the little I'm going to share will benefit us. And in principle, I'm more interested in the discussion and the conversation I hope to have. So I'll see how fast I can make this go. So I can just have your questions and tailor whatever thoughts I have to specific details that you may provide. Okay, so I'm going to be talking on adapting and thriving in a global professional environment. And for me, just looking at the topic I was given, I just thought it's important to, zoom in on the core themes. And for us, that will be essentially talking about the keywords. So what does it mean to adapt, to thrive? And also making sense of a professional environment and also considering the local and global context of what we're going to be talking about. And some questions sort of like came very directly, and I think those questions are important. They were important for me, or they are still important for me, because it's not like I've arrived. It's sort of like something constantly ongoing for me. How that, I'm always in new spaces, entering new positions. It's sort of like just keep rising, no? And when you rise, of course, the new terrain is something you're not used to. So questions like, how do you navigate unfamiliar spaces beyond your background or your experience? Or how do you succeed in a place where you were not prepared for? Or how do you even navigate expectations of your profession? Like, this one is doing that and that other person is doing this, and who gets the award, who gets rewarded, who gets acknowledged? And things like also like some profession are actually global in standing, but then if you're in some local place, you may think that what you see is all there is. Take, for example, if you're a mathematician and you were in Nigeria and then you're, say, a lecturer or something, and then in your department, people are not, going deep into mathematics or talking about the aspects of mathematics or talking about, the research, trend in mathematics, like who are those winning the Fields Medal, who are those winning the Nobel Prize and all that, and what sort of things are they working on, what conjectures. And you're just so much preoccupied with just, go for classes, it's grading and all that. But you must understand that if you're doing mathematics, it's a global thing. Like if you say you're a mathematician, there's certain expectations, and those expectations are global. And that does not have to be mathematics alone. It could also be with, whatever field you're in, medicine, law. Even though I know with law, you can tailor to more, regional practices of law or more local practices of law with respect to the place you are. But the thing is that most careers these days have this global undertone in terms of their demand. Okay, so how is that significant for us to consider? It's important for us as young adults or young professionals to understand that our lives are going to be fraught with transitions. So as a young professional, you're always going to be climbing ladders and you're going to be moving across skills, and it's important to see how you can chart your trajectory successfully. And also you understand that with these spaces, you're always having to reinvent yourself. You're always having to change. And also it depends on the kind of person you are. But if you're some of us who you want to show up and you're not just okay fitting in, you want to win. You want to be right there in front. Like you want to score points, right? So for you, it's not just that you want to be a spectator, you want to play. And it's more daunting when it's sort of like the environment changes constantly, like the cheese gets moved almost too often. And it's even more daunting when the playing field is increasingly global. Okay, so I do have some thoughts, having navigated from environments, both professional and professional, continental, having been to different places a bit, not that I've been to many places, but so the idea I have is I'm thinking of, based on my lived experiences across continents, professions, and workspaces, I just want to share some thoughts with us that I think those thoughts will be helpful. And I've decided to put those thoughts in a particular framework. And I've called this framework parameters, parametrics, and parameterizations. Now, if you're a math student, you probably think, oh, I've heard of parametric equations. I'm not trying to scare you, but it's just a simple formulation to help you remember what we're going to talk about. It's an amazing principle, and it's very beautiful. So I'm happy to share that with you. So I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to be sharing across three concepts: parameters, parametrics, and parameterizations. So I'm going to start with first one, which is parameters. Okay, so the friends of Job were trying to talk to Job and trying to get him to pay attention to what they were saying. And they said, look at this thing, we have searched it, know it for yourself. Essentially, when we say parameters, we're essentially talking about factors, because you're talking about environments, right? You're talking about systems, you're talking about showing up in spaces. But the thing is that you call them spaces or you call them environments. The thing is that this environment or spaces are defined by certain cores. They may be core values, core principles, core ideologies, core concepts, core perceptions, there are certain things that make up that system. That's why it's called a system, because it's a combination of parts, right? So those pieces, those building blocks, so those frameworks that define the system, the thing is that you want to find out those factors that really make that system tick. Okay, for example, let's take a typical academic system. Okay, so in an exam, and I'm going to get response on this. In an exam, I want to ask you a question. What really matters? Is it speed or accuracy? Like, is it who finishes the exam first or who gets the correct answer? What do you think matters in an exam hall? I'll just get a volunteer and then I'll move on. So what do you think to you matters in an exam hall? Or do I get to see the charts? Oh, I cannot see the charts. Oh, would you unmute and say, because my screen is full.
Okay, so from the charts, a lot of people are tilting towards accuracy.
Accuracy, okay, that makes sense. So it means that if you show up in the exam and 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you're trying to impress people and you exit the hall, it does not count. Because as far as the exam is concerned, it is not who finishes first. What matters is not that you got up first. Now you see, but the thing is that people who are not, I want to use the biblical term, learned, who are not well instructed, the students, they may feel terrified. Oh, this guy has finished. You see, but that's immaturity. Now, the more matured student goes like, yeah, he has finished, so what? That doesn't mean he's going to be the best or he's going to score the highest point, you see. But there are people who don't see it that way. There are people that immediately starts putting them in panic. Oh, this person has finished in 30 minutes. Oh, he must be so brilliant. That does not say that. You see, that he finished in 30 minutes does not say he's smart. You see, it is his final score, his grading that shows he's smart. Another thing is, say in school, well, what really matters? Is it a grade or the GPA? Of course, you're going to agree with me that it's a grade. It's a GPA. And this is a lesson that hit me hard as an undergraduate. As an undergraduate, I was very fascinated about mathematics. And I was in the math computer programs. I was keep my computer classes and go for my math classes. And sometimes the math classes were sort of like boring for me because the lecturer was probably not teaching at a pace or at a level I would really love, having exposed myself to other more grand mathematical materials. So what I would do is I would spend time in my particular professor's office, asking him questions about things I'm never going to learn in the program, in my bachelor's program, and asking about these and topological spaces and homomorphisms and Grothendieck and this and that. And I just kept on that way. And one day my professor said something to me. He asked about my other classes. And I said, yeah, I'm doing fine. Then he said to me, Obina, it does not really matter if in this course you get a 90 and a plus. Well, at the end of the day, you're not going to be evaluated based on my course. You're going to be evaluated based on your GPA. And it dawned on me, like I could be the best student in abstract algebra, but then if I don't do well in my other courses, I would be a failure and nobody would care what point I had in abstract algebra. So what I'm just trying to spell out to us is that it's really important. And this was, I was an undergraduate and I didn't figure that out. And it was a professor who had to, a wise professor who had to, Kennedy, you have to pay attention to this. So it means that sometimes if we are not called to certain things, our minds do not go there. And that's what I'm hoping I will just call out to us, that you're probably struggling because you don't know what counts. You don't know what the expectation is. You don't know what the demand is. And if you don't know what the demand is, how are you going to score the point? How are you going to hit that? You don't know what works here. Another experience I had was, I did a master's program in AUST, if you know that, in Abuja. And the thing is that in Futo, where I was coming from, to get an A, you need to get a 70 over 100. Okay. And so now I get to this very, very competitive school in Abuja, and I didn't know that to get an A was 95 over 100. Okay. But I was struggling in that program. It was very, very difficult for me, tediously difficult, given my background and other things. And also, this was part of what I'm speaking to also on this topic, because these are my lived experiences, right? So we did a particular test, and I was so scared I was going to fail. I was not sure. And then the result came out, and and the thing was that they put the script on the table and everybody could see and just, navigate through the sheet and find your own script and take. And of course, that meant my colleagues probably would have seen my score. And so I got to the place and I navigated and I picked my own sheet. And guess what? I got a 75. Oh, I was so happy. But so I didn't say this. I was like, oh, thank God. But I noticed the way my colleagues looked at me. They were like, who is this guy? Like they were like, is this person okay? I didn't know why they looked at me that way, but it was sort of like this deriding, belittling, condescending look. But I didn't understand it. So, anyways, I didn't bother. And I left. It was until reality dawned on me that in this school, A is a 95 and 75 was probably a D or a C. I'm sure it's not up to a C. Okay, maybe it was a C or something. And I saw why those guys derided me. You see, because I didn't know the expectation, I couldn't hit on what was really gonna count. You see that? So it's very important that, when you're in a place, you should understand the parameters. Okay, take for example, if you look at what a particular environment, I'll call this the Athenian society. Look at what it says about them. It says, for all the Athenians and strangers which were there spent their time in nothing else. Can you imagine that? It says they spent their time in nothing else but either to tell or to hear some new thing. So what are the parameters? That means that in this kind of system, in this kind of society, in this kind of environment, what counts? Number one, the things that count are research. So it means that people in this kind of environment must have a research mindset. They must be people who are always probing and pushing frontiers and charging at concepts. These are very interrogative environments. Like you're saying something more that cannot be, and they're challenging you. If you care, you can look at this in Acts 17. Paul was talking, they were going back and forth and they were reasoning with him. Can you see that? The Bible says Paul reasoned. Can you see? So these are environments where innovations are key, ideas are key, insights are key. And in this kind of environment, it's important that you're able to communicate ideas, presentation. So it's typical of academic environment, but you can also find that in more corporate executive environments, like say in executive levels, where executive members go for meetings and they go for workshops just to upskill and etc. and all that, and they have to come to the board and present ideas and all that. So if you're in such an environment and you're always looking, you have nothing to say, it's a matter of time, they're gonna kick you out. And if you're in that kind of environment, they're talking about new things. You keep talking about old models and how that, we should just stay, we should just manage it. They cannot understand because there's a competition and people have to keep moving and pushing things. So you come in and say, oh, let's try that thing that we did before. It's a matter of time, you'll be out of the system. Okay, that's for academic environment or the Athenian environment, but you can see other environments like corporate business environments. What are the parameters there? What are the things that count? In social environments, what are the things that count? Like, say, your neighborhood and relating with people and, getting to know people around you. What are the things that count? You know, the Bible says, he that would have friends must show himself friendly. So friendliness. So in social environment, it really doesn't count much if you're a geek. So I figured, okay, I'll give you an example. I worked in corporate environment. I was an IT person. One thing I figured was that outside there, nobody cares the math I know. Like people really don't care. Like who cares about topological spaces and homomorphisms or my fascinations about Alexander Grothendieck? Nobody really cares about that. And the math I'm talking about is a high level mathematics, so it's not like everyday math. So who really cares? And to them, mathematics is just that you can do multiplication, or you add up things, or you can divide, etc. It's not like the kind of sophisticated concepts that we discuss and engage with at this level. But I found out that people really liked my computer skills. And so outside, there are people who don't even know I'm a mathematician. They always know me as a computer guy, you see, because in that environment, nobody cares the math I know. All they care is my skill that I'm able to deliver and solve problems, troubleshooting. You see, that's the typical, transitioning. And also in social environments, I found out that people don't like it when you come out as a geek. They get terrified, or when you come out as being smart. People like it when you're amenable, you're smiling and you're acting sort of like dumb. So sometimes in social settings, you don't want to ike people out. So people are talking, just like, really? Even though you know it, you act like you don't know it. Oh, tell me more. Oh, that's nice. Oh, wonderful, etc. You see that. So anyways, what are the things that count in whatever environment you are? And now it's going to be that you're going to show up in different spaces, environments, or maybe another country. It's important that you pay attention to the parameters that make that system tick. Okay, so on parameters, how do you score points on parameters? So number one, make sure that you measure across, depending on what system or environment you're in. If it is performance, gone for those. If it stats or profile, some environments are very statistics and profile sick. So as you're talking, people are already looking you up. They are trying to, what kind of person is he and all that. So it means that you want to make sure that the evaluative parameters, evaluative items are things that you have on your CV or things that you have on your profile, so that with those they can relate with how they want to relate with you. And also in some environments, it's a thing of intelligence. They want to see how smart you are. And I even wonder, how do you even measure how smart somebody is? Well, anyways, the environments that are just interested in that part of you. So if you're there, you must make sure you don't bring down your grammar and say, or dumb down. No, like really give them full force of what your machinery is built for. And some environments are built on likability, like you have to be a likable person, so you're always smiling or you're always, jovial and etc. Anyways, and some environments, they really care that you speak their language. So I was in Italy, I had to start learning how to speak Italian because it was very helpful for me. The Italian likes the way you can speak their language. Ciao, come stai? It kind of like brings you to them. So that may be something that you can consider when navigating, say, like some country that speaks a different language from English. So environments really prize courage and composure and conduct and character, like how you carry yourself. So, for example, if you look at the issue with Babylon, they were saying that they wanted children that were skillful, children that could stand before the king. So in some spaces, you show up and you're fidgeting or you don't get noticed and you don't get promoted, I would say. You don't get highlighted. Some spaces to be highlighted, you need to work on your composure, like how do you carry yourself and how do you present yourself, and these are things that you have to work on. Some spaces are more amenable to your spirituality, in the sense that what people really care about is that you can pray, maybe, or that you know lots of scriptures, or that you're a pastor's kid. I don't know, but but that's not spirituality, anyways. But there are some spaces where your spirituality counts, and you can say that for more religious settings. Okay, now when parameters in the space are not clear, and when you don't speak to those parameters, you're going to suffer what we call imposter syndrome, because you're going to have a feeling that maybe I don't belong here, maybe I get crushed into this place. See, one way to deal with imposter syndrome, and sometimes imposter syndrome is not something you completely deal with, but one way to mitigate against imposter syndrome is to really, really know what defines that space and how you're wired and connect to that space. Another thing that can affect you if you don't understand the parameters is that you can start, pitching for self-sabotaging efforts. For example, in a space where people expect you to conduct yourself with such, pristine courage or such demeanor that is characteristic of dignitary or etc. So the idea of making contacts and smiling, and it can irk people out. It can put people off, right? But in spaces where somebody's greeting you like, "Hi, how are you?" "Oh, I'm good." "Okay, good." But there's some places where you show up and you're trying to be jovial and it puts people off. Sure, you see that. But you think that I have to show up jovial, I have to show up energetic and active, but that's exactly what is putting people off. That's exactly what's making them feel like you're not real or regional. Some spaces like you to be, they think that when you frown your face, say for example, some denominational spaces, it's like when you frown your face, that's when they take you serious, or that's when they start to think you're holy. Okay, so if you show up in such spaces and you're a smiling brother and you're jovial, they're gonna think that, oh, this one that is smiling like this, I hope he's not eyeing sisters. So it's important that you really, really understand what space you are, so you don't get engaged in self-sabotaging efforts. Another thing that helps with understanding parameters and living up to them is that you don't second guess yourself, because you know what the parameters are and you're just going to hit them. So you're not thinking, oh, am I sure? Did I not do that? No. You really, really have this thing cleared out, and this is what is expected, and you go ahead and hit it. So that will be that on parameters. Okay, now you've known the parameters, okay? The next thing is that you want to consider the parametrics. And an analogy I'm going to give respect to this is, I just have a question. Please, you have to unmute to answer the question. I want to ask a question. What makes a good marriage? Perhaps you have read some research article or something. I want to ask, what do you think makes a good marriage? Okay, you guys are eating my time. You have to unmute, otherwise I can't see.
The married people, please, can you unmute your mic and answer?
Okay, so recently, my name is Sunday Anani. Recently, I read a book by two American authors. They sampled 1,001 married people in America, and they asked them this question: what makes marriage work? The answers are very different, and of course,
go ahead, just give me some.
Varied. So we have answers like trust.
Okay.
A lot of people prioritize trust. Some other people prioritize laughter. Others said time spent together is a whole lot for them. Of course, sex in marriage was also part of it, and a whole lot. So I think I mentioned 4.
Yes, sir. So would you also consider food?
Food. Yeah. Sure. For survival every day. I think that's correct.
Right. Okay. But now the point is that if somebody tells you that, oh, it's food, or it's sex, or it's laughter, or it's not completely a correct answer, because it's not a parameter but a working of parameters. Do you understand? Because if you're saying it's food, come on, you're not eating every hour, okay? And if you say that it is, whatever other thing you're going to speak to, the thing is that it's not that thing. It's a combination of things. And not just a combination of things, an intentional way of working things. So you see, there are times that laughter would not work. You may need to cry. There are times that crying would not work. You may need to laugh. There are times that it's not even food that would help or grease up the marriage or whatever, affection you both share. It's a combination. That's what we call parametrics. A parametric of something, or a parametric relating to something, essentially talks about how you define a system or making a system work using certain parameters. You put the whole parameters, it's sort of like a formula or a model, okay? And you work that and say, okay, at this particular time, these are things you should focus more on, and in this other season, you should focus more on this. It's sort of like a variation of parameters and how they interwork to make the system thrive. Okay, now the thing is that after you've understood the demands, that's the parameters, and the next thing you want to do is that you want to consider models and strategies that work in such spaces. So I'm going to give you some examples. So in certain systems, the thing that works there, or the thing that makes the system tick, is the idea of certifications. People are always going for the next certificate, going for the next workshop, and etc. Because they believe by such trajectory of people and the whole work members, that's the way they can scale. And that's the way growth is measured. So to them, I was talking about intelligence. To them, that's just a measure of intelligence. I don't think that's a smart measure of intelligence. But in some spaces, that's just what it is. The more certificates you have, they think it's showing that you're intelligent or you're working. You see that, and people are exploiting such loopholes, such flaw. And in some other spaces, they measure these things by you attending conferences, seminars, and workshops, because to them, they think that if you attend seminars, workshops, and conferences, then you're contributing to the ecosystem of that environment, or you're giving presentations, or that it's sort of like a way of showing that you are active and you're involved in that place. In some other spaces, it's sort of like how you write articles, publications, because to them, it's a demonstration of expertise, because it takes some authority to write down things and leave it out there so that people can gauge and query. And so to them, it shows impact, authority, and that kind of like you owning what you do. Some other spaces, things like startups, organizing programs, initiatives, gives them a measure of leadership abilities or impact or public image that you have. So I'm going to just suggest that if you want to score points on models or formulas that can help you, there are certain things, however, that can be a hindrance, or I'll call them systemic barriers, that may try to hinder you from working out those models so that you can, because you've shown up in this place now. And you've seen that, okay, here, I can't just carry what I came from with. I'm just, okay, what works here? And you've seen the things that work. And you've now asked for that, how can I work these things? So this person is thriving. These other people are doing well. And okay, this guy is one of the best students. This person is one of the best, employees here. So, and then you're trying to now work the model, their habits, the other things they have in place. But you find out that sometimes the system will not grant you access. What I mean is that means that sometimes the system is defined in such a way that you have issues with accessibility. What do I mean by issues with accessibility? I essentially mean that the system does not give you room to I'm just looking for the best way to put this for you now. The system does not give you room to leverage on your past experience, because here your experience does not count. You see that? Or your background does not count. Or sometimes the system is built with certain nuances that, where you're coming from, you don't even understand. So you're finding it difficult to penetrate that system. In some other places, it's language, because the people there are always talking in their language, and even the books are written in their language, or sort of like even the concept are language structure. So there are nuances that if you don't know the language, you cannot really, really perform. In some places, the culture, how do you greet people? How do you respect? Or what are the things that they expect from you in certain spaces or certain environments? And some other people, and this particular thing I speak to for some of us, is the idea of delay entry or academic drag. The thing is that some of our systems where we come from produce late risers, if there are risers at all. So because somebody greets you and he first of all accesses you, you look young, how are you? Or maybe in Yoruba language, and it's this condescending greeting, and just because maybe they think you're 25 or 30 or 35, but they're gonna see another 25-year-old, 30, 35-year-old outside a CEO of a company, Esa, you'd be like, what? So what's the difference? Even if you are the CEO, he will not greet you with such respect, because it's a problem, you see, because in such spaces, they don't know what it means for people to be evaluated based on their impact or their pedigree, but they always look at cultural things like age and etc. So the thing is that some systems produce late risers. For example, a course that people are supposed to do for 3 years, you do it for 5 years. I know a school that even if you are doing herbalist technology, you're going to do it for 5 years. And you'd be like, does that spell efficiency? Does that? So people are coming out really late. They're getting their PhDs really late. They're finishing their bachelors really late. They're finishing so at the end of the day, they show up in spaces too late. That's if they even show up at all. And other issues you may have will be bureaucratic issues like navigating system requirements, government, etc. File systems and trying to process things. So those things can really, really affect. Okay, so my thoughts on how you can thrive will be, always leverage on collaborations. When you get into a new space, don't work alone, build a team. however you find that team. And secondly, you're going to face rejections, but still go ahead and connect. Sometimes you have to humble yourself. They're going to call you a fool, but you smile. I don't know if you've read this book. It's called Just Mercy. I'll try to remember his name, but he said something that one time, this guy is a lawyer. He showed up in the courtroom, and the white judge said, no, this place is not for maybe one condescending profession. You need to go out. He said, no, sir, I'm actually the one representing this person. He said, oh, really? And the person made one remark, and he laughed. So look at what he said. He said he had to laugh at his own ridicule so that he can navigate a system that presumes his ineptness, that presumes that he doesn't know anything. You see that? So sometimes you still have to find that connection, even though you're being rejected. You have to find your own entry. And number three thing I would encourage is that, always seek to bring something to the table. Be that person they know that, if this person shows up, he has something to say. Sometimes they even have to wait for you. And be creative, like work on ideas, be somebody who is cogitative, like always think, how do I make this work? What can I bring into this space? And it's always helpful to communicate, always communicate. And chances are gonna come, you should take them, chance to attend a conference, chance to meet some very prominent person in your field or your area or in your profession, chance to, you're gonna chance upon amazing things. And it's very important that you recognize those occasions and you really, really maximize on them. And I'm going to encourage that you consult a lot, like have mentors, people that you are always talking with. One thing I love about mentorship is that, I mentor people, and sometimes it's like their success is my success. Like they're trying to do something, and I'm working on this thing with them, and I'm so worked up because if they fail, it's like I failed. Do you understand? So I'm calling them, and it's almost like I'm the one, right? So it's always helpful when you have mentors and people who are guiding you along, because that way it helps you reduce the pressure and you manage situations better. Okay, the last thing I'm going to talk about today is on parameterization. So before I talk about this, I'll remind you of where we've come from: parameters, parametrics, and parameterizations. Okay, now they said this about Paul and Silas. They said these have turned the world upside down. It's amazing. Okay, so what is a parameterization? It's simply an art of representing as or defining parameters. And the key thing I want to emphasize here or say here, just a short thing I'm going to say, is that once you've seen the parameters or determining factors, and you've considered the existing gameplays or models, the next thing you do is you scale it. And I hope with some examples I'm going to show from my life experience, maybe this will make some sense. So what does it mean to scale it? What I mean is that sometimes you're going to have a model that works. Like if you do this thing, you will get the results that you want. But the thing is that you may not be able to, work that model in an efficient way. I'll give you an example. Okay, so in Italy where I've studied, my course-mates, my colleagues, my PhD colleagues, Kai, those guys can work. Like these guys will come in the morning. They don't, some of them don't take breakfast. They just down coffee and start working. It's like these people live on coffee. And I grew up not drinking coffee, right? And so how do you keep up with these machines, these horses, right? And these guys, they can really work. But it's like they get these things that induce them to work, but I cannot do that. But the thing is that I need to work hard so that I can get results. And I've seen the model of working, like how long you should work, sit down this straight number of hours, skip your breakfast, after lunch, quickly come back, go again, go another round. And yeah, okay, so that's what works. But the thing is that it's not optimal for me because I have a church, I'm a pastor, I have mentors, I don't subscribe to certain habits. I don't, there are many other things that are to me that are not to that system, even though I know the demands and I know the models that the demand works, right? So what you do is that you parameterize, meaning that you rework that model for optimality. Rework is in such a way that for optimality, e.g., you want to work that model in such a way that you can incorporate balance, you can incorporate your spirituality, you can incorporate your family. You need to rework that model. Other times, you need to rework that model for speed. For example, you are in a place and people are operating at a certain level, but it's because they already have some background. But if you show up in those spaces and you realize that you don't have the backgrounds, you have some gaps, like I always had with most of the faces that I've been in, like the program at Abuja I was talking about. I came in with a computer science degree, and this is a master's degree in mathematics. Like, how do you thrive with people who got first class in mathematics? And I am coming from Futo with a computer science degree, and some of them were even lecturers. and I'm doing master's program with them. No wonder I came very, very last in the entrance exam. What I'm just trying to say is that I had a lot of catching up to do. So it was not enough that I worked hard. It was important that I factor in my gaps. Otherwise, even I'm trying to catch up with the current material, my gaps are going to be showing and it will sabotage my effort with whatever it is that I'm being taught. Okay, so you rework the model for optimality, you rework the model for speed, you rework the model for future interest. For example, like you may say, I don't just want to pass this course. I want to have a perfect score. I want it to be on record. I had 100%. I want it to be on record that this. Maybe you want to break record. And why would you want to break record? Maybe for a case you want to make, something you want to put forward. So I'm just going to give some examples. I'm just about done. So would this be my last slide? Yes, there it is. Okay, so I'll give you some examples on parameterizations. Okay, so this was something that happened as an undergraduate. We're told that as an undergraduate that, you should always aim for A, because if you drop, you may drop to a B. And, one day the Lord just sort of like gave me an idea. It was like, why? So the parameterization was, don't aim for A or B or C. Don't operate by grade, operate by points. So what it was like, son, start aiming for 90 and above. And this was in Futo, right? Where I tell you that, it's a 70 to get an A. So towards the latter part of my undergraduate years, I was like, I want to be getting 90. All my courses, I want to be getting 90. I want to be getting 90 and above, 90 and above. You see, and it started working. I would see that in some course, I would get 90. And sometimes I will not get 90, I'll fall to 80. So, it was going that way. And guess what? It's still the same thing about getting grades, right? It's still the same thing about excelling in a course. But you see, my parameterization puts me on a higher level in terms of succeeding. Can you see that? Because I'm not operating by ABC, I'm operating by 90 and above. So even if I'm going to drop, I'm going to drop within an A. And that was sort of like how it was working. Okay. Now I now get to AUST. And guess what? To get an A is 95. I thought I was prepared because I was aiming for 90 and above. So I struggled a bit. But soon enough, because I already had that mindset, I was always getting the 95. And some cases, I would be the only one. And I got to PISA. And by the grace of God, I had to do some exams. And all my exams, I had 100%. You see, so the thing is that once you're able to have a parameterization, it may take you some time to work it. Like, for example, going from Futo to my master's and then to the PhD program and other programs. The thing is that it may take you some time, but as soon as you stabilize, excellence becomes a life. And it's something you're not even thinking about because it is your parameterization. Can you see? Okay. Now, what other systemic things can you experience? So you can show up in certain systems and there are stereotypes or low expectations. So I'll give you an example. In certain spaces I've been, and some of these spaces we show up and you're like the only Black person, or you're the only person of your kind there, or from your nation there. And the thing is that there are stereotypes because some people from your nation that they know are beggars or prostitutes or people that are refugees and people who don't speak good English. And so for some people, it's a shocker that you can even speak English, let alone speaking good English. Okay. And so people, it's a shocker that you even showed up in the class, let alone answer your question. Can you see something like that? So with these stereotypes, what I found out was that if I needed to take an exam, if I answer the question correctly, they won't think they would think it's a lock. So they'll ask me some more. Whereas the other person, the normal person gets asked the question, they give the answer, and that's the end. But for me, it's not enough because maybe he was lucky. Let's really check whether he really, really knows it because I don't think he knows it. I'm going to give you an experience to this. Okay, so in my master's program, we had this professor. He came by. He taught us a very amazing course, Measure Theory in Sam Low, and there was a final exam or was it a test? And one time he called me to his office. He said, "Oh, Kennedy Obina," because that's what I'm known with by in Nigeria. He says, "Oh, Obina, I saw you solved this question, but you did not include this thing. But I know you know it, so I gave you the full marks." Can you see? So he had faith in me, he had trust in me. Oh, it's Obina. I give him, he knows it. Maybe he didn't want to put it, he thinks it's trivial, so he didn't write it. But I know he knows it. So he gives me the full mark. Now, I cannot try that in Italy because there, they don't even think you know, right? So I found out that the parameterization in this system will be different. I'm not going to be building on trust or likability of my personality or even some record, which I don't have here, right? So it meant that if I were to do anything or if I'm told to do anything, I double the stakes. So for example, so an example would be if I'm preparing for exam, so the PhD exam in PISA is sort of like you have a course material, you'll be tested on course material, and then you'll be tested on presenting a paper. And the idea is that you show up, it's an oral exam, the professor will ask you a question from anywhere in the topic in the course he has taught. He can ask you any question, like pick it anywhere in the course. And this is like a semester-long course or sometimes a year-long course. So he can ask you just about any question, very thick, high-level material. And that is not enough. You will now have to take a research paper, digest it, and present it. So you know what I would do? After I'm done with the exam preparation, like studying the lecture notes and the materials will be done in class. If they told me to read one paper, I read two. Meaning that, because if you have the paper, you're going to have references to the paper and references from the paper. So I'll look at those. I'll see some improvements. I'll look at some adjacent works and things that you sort of like have improved on this and connect them both. So I'm reading two parallel papers. So by the time I'm presenting, and then I do not just present the papers, I present them in extemporaneously, meaning I don't hold the material. Like I've digested the material and I present this mathematical paper. You know, if you do mathematics at research level, it's difficult to write a paper, much more, digesting it by somebody who has not written it. And I'm having to present this paper without the material, just talking. So what does that say? This person must really be confident. This person must really be prepared. And with some tricks on how to lay out things. But anyways, what I'm just saying is that they're telling you to do this, they double the stakes, because you know that in this place is a different thing. And you're not going to play by the rules. You know the rules that work, but you have to rework the rules so that you are not a victim of systemic barriers. Okay. All right. I guess I have many more things to say, but I'm just going to stop here. All right. Can I take questions?
Okay. Wow. Thank you so much. I believe that we have our questions down. I want to see your emojis, your appreciations, your comments in the chat box. What stood out for you? Please start dropping that. In the next 1 minute, I'd like to read out what stood out for you in the course of the presentation. What stood out for you in the course of the presentation? What did you learn? Do you have any questions? What are your questions? Please start dropping your questions in the chat box. I think that one thing that scared me was herbalist technology. Never heard of that course. I'm still looking for the school offering it. I know that there are people that will be willing to take on.
It's not a school. There's no school offering it, but I would just say, we have a school where whatever course you do, most schools of technology in Nigeria do that, no matter what course you do. So I'm just like saying, even if you're studying herbalist, you still do it.
Okay. Thank you so much. I believe that the questions are coming in, and I believe that we have okay, I see the comments. Some comments: super delivery, great delivery. Thank you, sir. Amazing delivery, sir. Super, wonderful delivery. Doubling the stakes. I think that is a very key one, doubling the stakes. And that comes from a factor of observing and acknowledging your environment. Because what works in Lagos would not work in Italy, like you said. Thank you so much for all these important nuggets. While the questions are dropping in, I see that there are questions around the lines of, you had mentioned something around the lines of speed, right? How do you try to catch up when there are gaps like that? Maybe you come to a new environment and you know that there are already gaps in respect to your skill set, gaps in respect to your timeline of delivery, and you want to measure up and meet up with the global requirements. How do you build that speed? How do you try to gain that speed, right? You have also talked about when there is a jovial person and then you enter the room, you read the room and they don't really pass off like that. I've seen situations whereby like maybe people get into an interview and for their own sake, they're trying to lighten the mood, but it looks like everybody on the panel is just upfront and giving straight face and all of that. So but if you know that that's not your personality and you want to be in these spaces, is it that you just adapt? What is the thin line between losing yourself and adapting to spaces like that? I would also read through. Do you want to address these questions, or you want me to add?
I'm not gonna take them in combo. I'll
What?
prefer to take. I can't take the questions in combo. Like
Okay, so maybe I'll just stop with
just take
these
them
two
one
and you
by
could address these ones. Yeah.
Okay,
Please go
so
ahead.
maybe if you tell me one question I can take on right now. Because for me, you sort of like you were making a comment. So just give me one question now.
Oh, okay. So yes, I was talking. It was a question. There were two questions. So the first question was on gaps and
Great.
trying to catch up. So I was saying that in the event that you go get into a space, a global space, like you said, and then you noticed that there were gaps and you had to catch up, how do you do that when you realize that there are gaps and it feels like, because sometimes it can be overwhelming, you don't know where to start, how to catch up, what to do in order to catch up? How do you organize yourself in that place so that
Right.
you're able to catch up in no short time?
You're right. Thank you so much, Stefis. So the thing with gaps is that, I had an animation I wanted to put up when I was talking about parameterizations. The thing is that if you have a circle, you can parameterize the circle by cos theta, sine theta, and say circular radius 1. No worries. So you can use the parameter theta to determine points on the circle. You're using cos theta, sine theta. That's for the x and y axis. But you can decide to make cos 2 theta and sine 2 theta. What that means is that the speed of this second one now will be twice of the first one. So it means that sometimes you have to really push yourself beyond the usual. I can tell you. So it means that, if you're coming from a place, you may need to minimize on sleep. Like sometimes some things have to suffer. Okay, some things have to suffer. So what that means is that when you're given a course, when you're done with the course material, or as you're trying to read something and you don't understand it, don't force yourself continue reading. Find out the gap, go and fill the gap, then come back. Now, because you know you're going to go fill the gap and come back, it means that you're going to start studying way before everybody. That's number one. And number two, you're going to make sure that you don't follow the material with so much gap, because you know that if you try to catch up with the material and you've already given so much gap, say you miss some lectures, you can't afford to miss lectures, or you can't afford not to. You're supposed to be digesting them per time. Because if you give too much time or too much space between what has been covered in class and you catching up, the whole thing will increase. Because for you, it's not only that you catch up what has been taught in class, you still have to go and build background before you catch up. So you have to double up. And that means that some things you have to suffer. Say, for example, the time you have to talk with people, or say your sleep. If you used to sleep like 5 hours, you may truncate to 3 hours and 4 hours. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much. I think that is very, very key. I can relate to that. A case in point is maybe when you come back to a material or you come back to a course and it looks like you have to start again. If you really want to understand, you have to just start again. So I think I can relate to that. Thank you so much for that feedback. I've forgotten the other question, so I'll just read through the question in the chat box. What is an effective way to deal with imposter syndrome in a global? Yes, that was the second question. What is the effective way to deal with imposter syndrome in a global work environment vis-a-vis workplace politics?
So the thing with imposter syndrome is that you can completely annihilate it, and it's not something that has to do with you because you're coming from Africa or somewhere. It's something that even people in some particular places are still suffering. It's not a thing about your nationality or even your color or your race. It's a thing of, how people access the demands of an environment or a career. Okay. So the thing is that sometimes people don't think they are competent enough, particularly in very competitive environments. So they feel off. My way. And I don't think I've dealt with imposter syndrome completely, but I do find some things that are very helpful. For example, if I'm in a place, I want to know what really ticks here. Like what are they expecting of me? Like, say for example, teaching. I taught for the first time in 2022, and of course, I've always been teaching. But say in a typical undergraduate environment, because as a PhD student, you were not allowed to teach. I did a teaching assistantship, but I didn't lecture a course. And they had reservations about giving me a course to teach because they were like, oh, he's coming from Europe and the European style is different from the Canadian, North American style. Are we sure we should give Kennedy a class or shall I let him go for training? And my supervisor was saying, no, Kennedy should. I think he can teach you. So they allowed me to take a course. So of course, I already have doubt as to my abilities to teach, number one, and that was communicated. And number two, I'm also teaching in this space for the first time. I'm coming from Nigeria, I've been in Italy, and this is North America. So how do you deal with this kind of students? Okay, so sadly, I should have imposter syndrome. But then it boils down to what is expected of me. So the thing that is expected of me is that, I need to bring something that the students will love. I need to, catch the students. So I knew what was needed. I need to catch the students. I need to, go very smart and, in the way that I handle the concept and etc. So because I knew those things, I just spoke to those themes. I just spoke to those points. And did you know by the end of the academic year, I won a teaching award for a first teaching, the first time. See, so the idea now, did I fully deal with the imposter syndrome? Not really, because sometimes I had fears. Now, am I sure the students are receptive? Are they accepting? And sometimes you may not really know. So you may just have to walk by faith. So I guess my answer would be, we cannot deal with it completely because these are spaces that are very competitive and sometimes you're not sure if you've met the demands, but it's always very helpful when you know that you are at least making effort towards meeting the demands and maybe to a satisfactory level you deliver. And whatever it is, you'll be like, I've given my best, I've spoken to the points, and I hope it works well.
Yes, thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Thank you so much for that feedback. So I think I agree with you. Like I think imposter syndrome comes from a place of fear. And if you've been practicing or you've set up a foundation of preparation, you may not even be conscious of imposter syndrome because you'll be more confident in yourself than seeing the situation on ground or feeling unworthy. There's another question here which I think is very, very important and which we need to address. It says, please, sir, throw more light on how to navigate in a place where language is a barrier. Though you know your job very well, but you find yourself in a place where you are trying to. Why are you laughing? You are trying to. I can't see this. You are trying. I'm trying to get the question. I think I've lost it. Okay, you are trying to blend in the language. So let me take it again. Please, sir, throw more light on how to navigate in a place where language is a barrier. Though you know your job very well, but you find yourself in a place where you are trying to blend in the language.
So you're starting on the best note. The best note is to know your work very well. The thing is that if you're very good, there'll always be cases made for you. Okay. So always focus on the cutting edge, which is that you want to be really, really good, like extremely, really, really good. That's number one. And number two, the language will help you to navigate the social setting, which sometimes can be very instrumental to your promotion. You see, because sometimes they want to consider you and, they want to be sure that you can fit into their space. So having understood that most times they are very understanding of your situation. So it's sufficient for them that you demonstrate interest in the language. And some things are really, really easy. So start with the easy things like greetings. Ciao, come stai? Like, hi, how are you? Va bene. So if you take it slow and easy, it's one thing about language. You just start picking pieces of it. And when you pick those pieces of it, use them. Because that way it comes across to them that, oh, this person is really, pushing and making effort. And they will also reply you in their language. So sometimes it seems like you're picking the language. And, yeah, with time, you acquire enough vocabulary to sustain conversations. But ultimately, when it comes to the language, as to being a barrier, it's a barrier because they don't know if you're accepting of them or if you like them. And when you speak their language, you're showing that, you're accepting and then you want to belong and you appreciate that you're with them, even though they speak a different language. So any effort you make towards that end will get rewarded.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that feedback. I think that the next question, we'll just go straight to the next question. Please drop in the chat box what you are learning, what your take home is from this session. I'd like to see more of that on the chat box, and I would read that. I only have 2. I want to have more of that. So what's your take home? What are the lessons you're learning? Please drop them on the chat box as well. There's a question here from Boomex Fashion. She's asking, sir, knowing these things, you said figuring it out. You said figuring it out takes time. Scanning the area and knowing what is acceptable takes time. So how do you make up for this lost time? I hope you understand the question. I don't.
So perhaps the person is wondering like how you manage the fact that it takes time, but then you may not have time, for example, or that it takes time, and within the time that it's taking, you're already suffering the consequences of not, getting those things. What I'm just gonna say to you is that, life it's not gonna be rosy. So sometimes you're gonna feel some pain, and the pain you're gonna feel is because of something you're working through. So you should be patient with yourself and accommodate the process. So if it's gonna take time, it means that it's a process. And the fact that it's taken, take for example, so this program I was talking about in AUST, I don't want to even talk about that. But the point is that in that program, this is the first time in my life that somebody is really cleaning you, like because you don't know anything. Because most of my time I've always been among top in my class, and so I didn't know what it's like to be treated like somebody who does not know anything, because I didn't think that intelligence or that people answer questions or not is a way to relate with them. So the thing that you live here, but you don't know how people elsewhere feel. So I never thought that people can be judged based on that they don't know something. Sure, you understand? Because if somebody doesn't know anything and you know it, okay, you'd be like, okay, yeah, maybe because you know what you did to know it, you studied, you read. Sometimes you were blessed with people who could teach you. So you couldn't, some of us don't think that the fact that you know a thing and others don't know it's not a big deal because you know that you just happen to know it. But I didn't know that there are people who can take that against you simply because you understand. Anyways, in this program, while I was building my background, trying to build my mathematics in the mathematics program, coming from a computer science background, sometimes I was even rejected. Like they want to do something, they'll be like, they won't call me because they don't think I know anything, right? I'm like, but why would you treat me like that? Like, you don't even know who I am, right? So, anyways, I had to suffer the shame. In fact, let me tell you something. One of the TAs told another, they were talking, he was talking to students. He said, all of you are doing well, but this will be now. I don't think he's improving. Because I asked a question about epsilon definition of continuity. And that time I had not figured it out. And this guy, he took it up and he told my colleagues, and those ones went and, circled it among this, this TA is saying this about Obina, that guy. I don't know what is even doing here. And I heard it didn't really broke my heart. And I told another TA, I said, Obina, don't worry. I know you're making progress. What I'm just trying to say in essence is that while that time is taken, you will feel pain. It's part of the process. You just need to be patient. Okay.
While that time is ticking, you feel pain, but it's part of the process. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. I promised I was going to read people's take homes from the chat box, and I'll do just that now. Beatrice says, I learned some about setting more goals for excellence. My take home is that I should be collaborative. Another person says, Mr. Chinedu Okete says, don't just be satisfied fitting in, aim to be among the top and aim to win. I think that largely a lot of the questions have been answered and addressed. Before we let you go, sir, I just want to use the floor to you for any final comments, final words, respect to this very important topic that we have discussed today. If there's any other, before you jump in, I'd just like to give 3 seconds. If you feel like you have a question where you want to express yourself and unmute your mic, you could go ahead and raise your virtual hand now before 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so in the absence of no further questions, I'll just leave the floor to you. Thank you very much, sir, for the excellent delivery of this topic. You have done very amazingly well. Thank you, sir. Please, I'll use the floor to you now for your final words. Thank you.
Thank God. Thank you so much, Sister Peace. Thanks for having me. So I did have a conclusion. it's been quite a week navigating so many demands. But something I wanted to conclude with is why you have to really succeed. That it's not about you actually. So there's this principle, I love this principle. It's the principle of synecdoche. Synecdoche is a figurative speech where a part speaks for a whole. And you can find that in 1 Samuel chapter 17. Goliath was saying, you people should give me a man. If he destroys me, all of us are going to serve you. And if I kill him, all of you are going to serve me. There's such a thing as having meaningful success. Because when you win, you give the room, you give the floor, you give the platform for other people to win as well. And particularly people that, look like you, or they don't have to look like you racially or even geographically. They could look like you in heart and in spirit. Say you're somebody of character and decorum. When you win, you tell us that it's good to maintain good character and to have such decorum to thrive. So I'm going to encourage us, let your success have meaning and be considerate in spaces wherever you are to make sure you spell that out as a great story.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I got a question in the DM about when you mentioned something about along the lines of when you are jovial and then you come into a space where there is decorum or the environment looks quiet and it can communicate like, oh, you're not a serious person. How do you adapt? Do you try to be like them, knowing fully well that that is not your person? Or do you try to, how do you do that? Or is it okay to change the dynamics or still be yourself in that kind of environment? Considering that we're talking about global spaces and it's important that you read the room.
So the thing is that it's not about you. That's one thing you have to understand. So this insistence on me, you have to let that go. It's one thing to be traditional, it's another thing to be transitional. And to transit, you have to reinvent. And the reinventions does not mean you get destroyed as a model. It just means you develop robustness or capacity to fit in. So if Paul said to the Jew, I'm a Jew, to the Greek, I'm a Greek, and to this, I'm that, does it mean that he denounces his Jewish roots? No. It's just that he has to appeal in this setting. And so to see that you've not really destroyed yourself, when you show up in spaces where you can be yourself or you express yourself more, you do. So that means you're not lost completely. So the thing is that you must understand that it has nothing to do with you. It's not about you. So if I show up in a space and I'm going like, hi, how are you? And the person, I'm good. Okay. Just right. That's good. All right. Because in such spaces, they have parameters they are evaluating on, and they are parametric, meaning that the way you conduct yourself speaks to this parameter. In fact, if you read the room and you understand this the way they are, you already have a leverage because you know the parametric they are using. And then you can play along that line. It's one thing for you to show up in a space and they're looking at you cogitatively, reading you, accessing you, trying to see if you're somebody who's flippant or somebody who is, rash or somebody who is emotional. So these are things they're calculating, they're looking at you. And you are going, oh, hi, I'm good. They think you're not calculated. They think you're not calm. They think you're not composed. And all this is coming up to them. It's not about you. It's about the programming in their mind. So in a case where you already know, you should appeal so that you can win. And anyways, I'm just going to summarize by saying you should understand that it's really not about you. It's about thriving in such systems.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation today. It was well delivered. Thank you. And thank you everyone for staying through to this time, for following through till the end. As we all know, the Young Professionals Life Enlightenment Forum happens fortnightly. That is once in 2 weeks. So we have it twice in a month and it's on Wednesdays by 9 p.m. The time doesn't change. We'll be communicating in the training platforms what the next theme is before the week runs out. So stay tuned with us. Thank you for joining. Make it a date with us on the 27th of May and see you. Before we go, just like to have a brief word of prayer. But before we have our prayer, I would like for our patron, Daddy Olulade, to please give us the final words and also the closing prayer. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Obina, it's been a wonderful time. And listening to lectures from you here is captivating tonight. I know that if we've given you more time, you probably reduce the, the parameters, the parametrics, and the parameterizations into some higher level calculations, and then we'll start the dy dx and come up with use some wonderful things. Well, what I'm saying is we truly appreciate your input today. I'm sure everyone has been able to, understand what we are saying, even though a lot of people might not have some background as you have. This is the quality of a good teacher. You've added value to us, and we want to appreciate you very well. And so every one of us, I think let's go out there and, go and evaluate the parameters in which actually is in our space. And just ensure you can identify those parametrics so that it becomes easier for us, to be able to walk through the parameterizations. It is good to grow along the line. And like our facilitators have said, go and make it over there so that you will give room to others to succeed. It's been a wonderful time tonight. God bless every one of you for being a partaker of this. Invite others. And please help us appeal to those who joined us, who intended to join us, but are not using their good phones, their good names to enter. We did not allow them in. When people want to join this team, they go ahead and join with their real name. Otherwise, they go to our YouTube channel. God bless every one of you. Can we have the closing prayers? Lord, we thank you very much for tonight, and we thank you because you've even used your servant for us. Lord, we are looking for ways to be able to excel there, wanting to glorify your name. Lord, we pray that, Lord, all we have learned will help us to be able to ascend into the levels you want us to get into. We pray that no matter the difficulties we have, we'll be able to scale them so that we'll be of use in our world. Thank you very much, oh Lord, for what you have blessed us with. We give you all the glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Ken. Thank you to all the participants that joined us. See you on the 27th. Good night for now.